from the apple of my eye, and I am totally stoked in terms of like the progression of everything that's going on. Um, I do wanted to go over certain things because I alliances, and the reason I'm bringing up strength is because the Lord is putting in my heart that there is a definite alliance between the Philippines, the US, and Israel on the basis of freedom of religion, and this is where Christianity flourishes. So, the Philippines are actually sort of a chosen country where refugees that did not want Islam ended up moving into. Okay, it is not it is not necessarily, they're saying that it's ancient and all that, and if it is ancient, it would be the itis being the ancient thing about the Philippines. Now, in terms of the country being the chosen country in Asia for evangelism, it is because of the diversity of the Filipinos. And let me just reiterate some of the things that makes Filipinos unique. And I wouldn't say unique, but it has power in it, in the sense that the very pride of Filipino is actually their faith in God. Um, there is no real pride per se, besides that very core. And the people have what we call kababayan. Kababayan is kind of a like a patriotic nationalistic thing, but it is actually more inherent just in regards to the people themselves. So Filipinos, even if we are not in the Philippines, let's say I walk on the street and I met somebody I came across someone that looks like me, there is an immediate recognition where we're like, hey, you know, I see you. And that happens in every culture. But in particular, for the Filipinos, it's a matter of recognizing the identity of the Filipino. And the Filipinos are actually highly adaptable. We love other people of different cultures. We want to understand it. And that is what we call kapwa tao. Kapwa tao. It's a type, it's humanity. It is basically, it's sort of like a good Samaritan concept, you know, that if you find a person that is either in severe pain or sorrow or needs healing, you wanted to be part of their life. It's kapwa tao. Tao is people. Kapwa is kind of belonging. And you sort of recognize that there is a human need, and you want to be a part of their recovery or their healing, because the Philippines are always inundated with several calamities throughout the years, and we have to value people more than we value animals. It's getting too hot in here. So anyway, I'm in Carmel. It's a beautiful, there's a signature home here. Kind of simple looking, but very expensive. It's another one. Just to kind of let people have a little fun. So, the other thing, so we've got the, kababayan, kapwa tao. We have makipag-ugnayan. It's to relate. Filipinos are not as proud of ourselves as much as we wanted to relate to other people and enjoy that level of humanity with them. So it's kind of like, hey, come on, let's enjoy this. Filipinos are known to adapt very quickly because actually, I think most of us are not tone deaf, and we are, Filipinos can actually copy a lot of voices. And I don't know why. The Negritos are like Africans, and so they have a strong vocal cords, because the higher the melanin, the stronger your collagen as well, and that is what creates the vocal cords. And so we like to relate to people. Now, the other thing about Filipinos, and I should probably go over some things that, a little bit of pitfall with Filipinos, but um, the Filipinos love they love new trends in terms of like what's new, like we're very fascinated with something new. And oh, we heard, oh, for example, we have this thing called a peer, and you slap someone's hand, that's a peer. And I realize high five is normally what it's called. It's not a peer, but we call it a peer. It didn't dawn on me until I came to the US. We call it high five. Um, so the um, the issue with the Filipinos for the longest time has always been, it's been conquered multiple times and is always delivered by God multiple times. So there is an inherent Makadios is being for God. Like you recognize God. Like we know that with or without somebody looking at us, if we lied, if we did something wrong, God always knows. So Filipinos will always say, alam ng Dios. So God will always know. So if whether you do something good in the eye of a witness or not, God will know. So we don't want to do something, and we know, and there's punishment, the punishment of God. I was reading the book of Judges, and the punishment of God is very well felt by Filipinos. Okay, we know how God can punish, and sometimes we call it karma, but it's not really. When we say karma, we are not Hindus, so we believe that God teaches us something. We know the source of that. It's not just a kind of like an environmental spirit thing. It is actually coming from a source where you do something wrong, like you disrespect an elder, you're rude to your parents, you do this and that. There is an imminent judgment up, and there's a possible judgment upon you that you have to watch out for. So it is very quick for anyone. It's like this curse that can be given by God, or a teaching from God, is very strong among Filipinos because of the calamities that we suffer through each and every year. And given an example is we don't get as much tsunamis, but we get typhoons, we get earthquakes, we get volcanic eruptions, and typhoons, and lots of floods. And the concept of trying to maintain like castles and all that, it doesn't count, because when you can build mansions if you want, yeah, but what's the point? I mean, if God wants to push that down in the ground and throw it in the ocean, He will. So the value is almost always your relationship with your family and people. And I think this is more common for islander people, this personality. That's why we are much more hospitable to people, because Humans are the greatest resources, whereas buildings can collapse when the Lord wants it to collapse. So you don't depend on buildings the way Europeans do it, and we don't have as much scarcity in terms of fish, and our oceans are full of, it's got fish. I'm not saying we don't have poverty. We can look impoverished and still survive because of the weather. So when you've got a weather that doesn't just kill you in the winter, and if you've got simple things that you can build, and you keep it simple, because God can swipe it out quickly as well, and then you have to rebuild again. So we're in the concept of, we got to keep rebuilding, we got to keep rebuilding, we got to keep rebuilding, we got to maintain community, because who's going to help you? How are you going to build your home alone? How are you going to survive the flood? So that's the concept and mentality of the Filipinos. And so even when we see other people, we know that we could relate to them. What I've observed in the US is that the stability of the nation is so strong that they do not have, the building can almost mean your strength, and it's kind of, I mean, it's Europe, they could preserve buildings. I mean, Middle East, they could preserve buildings. Philippines, you don't. So museums is not big in the Philippines. We have some, and apparently the land can be ancient, I mean, the fragment, but a lot of the land of the Philippines is volcanic. And that speaks of God. So there are things that I think makes the Filipino very adaptable in different regions, and it's actually because of respect. The language we have the word po. Excuse me po, thank you po, sir, ma'am, kamusta po. When they say the po means, it's a sign of, we recognize that you are a respectable person, that we want to respect you, and people will use that psychologically. The psychology of that is to actually embed a particular value, especially with the aged people. The older the person is, you have to respect them. You have to respect them. You gotta slow down for them. You gotta give into what they need, and you have to, even if an older person is rude, you gotta be nice to them, because God has a purpose of allowing this person to live for such a long time. Because, God can take life as quickly, and the older people are treated with reverence. And so that's something that, as you get older in the Philippines, you don't feel as left out. Older people are not as invisible, whereas in the US, the older you are, the more you don't count. Like you're not as visible, and you're trying so hard to be younger and younger, and it's really not a good thing all the time. I mean, it's good to look the best that you can, but not taking value in your life as you get older is also not very good. So the Filipinos are, they make really good caregivers in terms of that, because there's value to the aged person and the value of a human life. The other thing too is that, Filipinos are much more, the men and women. Actually, I think it's skewed more for women. It seems like it's quicker for women, not just to get jobs, but to get promotions. The women are more valued in their existence, and so we don't have what happens in China, where if you're a girl, you're discardable. Like, I could not relate. I could not relate to women's studies, because I never felt that as a woman, you are not as valued. Now, some boys may be treated better by their moms, but it's, the women are as much of a breadwinner in the Philippines, and so they're not looked down upon. And obviously, caregivers all over the world traveling, a lot of women nurses. There's also men nurses, but predominantly women. So that's inherent. there's more equality in the Filipino Asian community with men and women, much more than in the Hispanic and in the sector of I would say, even from, when it comes down to Chinese and Japanese, the value of the women is more in the Philippines, and we don't even notice it. So educationally, I think the women's suffrage was in the Philippines quite uh, you know back in the 40s. But from what they're saying historically, there are always there's even, they're finding, I've never seen this before, but they were finding historical records that there are women that actually commanded warriors by the thousands. And to the point that when Spain came, Spain could not believe it. They wanted to erase this particular history. And they saw that the men and women are very civilized and they have their own culture. They almost don't know what they could bring to that culture. So the way Filipinos learn how to actually relate to people is that I believe Filipinos have a stronger sense of psychological relational ability. Like, they know how to use humility in order to gain someone's cooperation. Very strong sense of humility. Like, we're not allowed to really flaunt. If you are complimented, you don't just say thank you. Oh, I am not. Like, you're beautiful. Oh, no, I'm not. uh, they're trying to change that now, but we don't want to be like, oh, you look so beautiful, and we're like, oh, of course, because we know that beauty in particular is very relative, and it's also fleeting. And you don't want to just be valued on that particular basis. So the concept of beauty must relate to your intelligence. It's always the teaching. you know Beauty is secondary. Your intelligence is much more valued in society. um you don't want to be so into beauty to the point that you become stupid, and it doesn't take you far in life. So the Filipino concept of beauty has changed, and right now the morality in the Philippines has also changed. That is the big pitfall, and that is brought about by Hollywood, where we are so valuing what goes on in Hollywood. We want to be like them. Because Filipinos are very relatable people. you know if we go to another country, we dress like they do, and we want to talk like they do. Even if we were to talk among ourselves in our language, we want to be more like them. It is valued to be able to assimilate to another culture, to another place. And because this is how you improve your life. You cannot just maintain an old tradition and language if it's not as applicable. So the other thing, now what else do I need to really bring up? So again, I'm doing this all for the purpose of alliance between the US, Philippines, and especially Israel. Now, the reason why Israel is so important to the Philippines actually have one of the most Ten Commandments you would find from our streets. It is completely legal to flaunt the Ten Commandments everywhere and have the fear of God. That is a statement of having the fear of God. The Catholic statues are also for the purpose of reminding people of the fear of God and that there's God. You know, supposedly we see it. Oh, we have to respect that, because it's, even though it's a statue and it can be idolatrous, it is, we have to respect that. It is hard for Filipino to throw away a picture of a saint, for example, um, or we kind of feel bad, or we might have to kiss it or cover. I don't know, but there's the reverence for God is so important, even when people don't read the Bible as much. And the concept of of a miraculous survival is so common in the Philippines. I don't idolize miracles, and I know that is providence of God, but I have experienced so many miracles in my life in the Philippines because of the instability of the nation in and of itself. Now, what else do I wanted to bring up? Another thing that is really inherent of Filipinos, especially the youth, is that the huge fascination for something that is colloquial and cool on a worldly on in the standard internationally, in particular the US. They're they aspire to that a lot. They want to know what is cool to them, and that is again the pitfall of the Filipinos. Highly relational, highly agreeable. We're more people pleasers, I believe, and we're more subservient. And doing all of that, the pitfall is we are heavily influenced, and being heavily influenced, what it does is that you are bound to lose sight of what's key element in your life, because you wanted to please others. So with the Filipinos, you know, working for someone has been so valued. It's They're not as entrepreneurial, although that is fast changing. It is fast changing. My observation with Filipinos is the Filipinos right now are way more entrepreneurial than they ever were, but that also goes along with the need for intellectual progress, and international traveling is heavily sought for by people, and English being the language of business, we are able to, traverse different parts of the world. Now, I'm gonna bring up again this Enrique de Malacca, who's actually Malaysian. He was actually a slave of Magellan, and the slave of Magellan must have been very brilliant and has a hold of language acquisition to manage being Magellan's slave and a good confidant almost. And he was even promised that he can have freedom, afterwards. But then Magellan eventually died in the Philippines. He never really circumnavigated. It is actually Enrique de Malacca that circumnavigated the world. But he is also evangelical in the sense that he translated for the people in the Philippines what is in the Bible, which actually brought the Filipinos closer and to the Western civilization, and that also gave them an alliance with the democratic and a more it was geared towards the Catholic and the Spain. However, those last names that was given to the Filipinos apparently was given to the Filipinos for the purpose of taxation. So a lot of the native Filipinos in the Philippines, after 300 some years of Spanish ruling, um, at some point we were bought by America. We were bought by America, and so I guess we owed a lot of debt to America, or we were owned by America, and then there was like some kind of war. I don't know all the history about this, but they what is surprising is that the last names given to us are actually Sephardic Jewish last names. And then there's a connection between Mexico and the Philippines. The Mexicans are 25% Filipino DNA. But we don't know if Filipinos have 75% Mexican. So, I don't know. There is some kind of, there was a travel that was happening between The Philippines and Mexico, which I've never heard of this, not growing up with the history of the Philippines, never heard of this. But I didn't go to college there as well to know all those crazy details. But there was a ship that went back and forth because Philippines is one of the biggest trading route. Now, the one thing that is interesting about the Filipinos is that considering the fact that it is one of the highest trading um, island, okay, an archipelago, there is a strict ruling against trading for drugs. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it is it is sentenced to death. Okay, so if you bring drugs in the Philippines, you know they can kill you. You can be in prison for life or something like that. And they highly prevent that, which is a good thing, which has kept the Filipinos from, I mean, there's already a lot of addictions. I mean, if you open that, that would make the Philippines really bad. In the same way, the homeless issue in California and Oregon is so bad because of this propagation of drugs. And if there is one thing that they call him Digong, Duterte became famous for the fact that it made it a lot easier for parents to keep their kids away from drugs because Duterte is a little bit more Muslim in his culture, and he is willing to kill. And he says there's no point rehabilitating, which is really wrong. This is not the democratic thing. Duterte makes a point that Filipino people should not be under drugs, and if they become addicted, that they should just be killed. And that is not democratic. I think he may be there may be something against Duterte right now because of that, because there are a lot of people that had died under him. And the people are saying, well, he went after the little druggie, but he didn't go after the big wig drug lords. And under Duterte, the Philippines would have been more on the side of China. Under Bongbong Marcos, the Philippines shifted back to the US, and we have now 10 bases for the US in the Philippines because the Filipinos, even if we are good soldiers, Filipinos are known to make really good soldiers. Um, I didn't believe it myself. I was in shock. I've heard of this. But I mean, people would tell me, I guess they call the Filipinos the little F and brown machine. They had a nickname for them because the Filipinos, when it comes down to being a soldier, is exemplary in many battles and in different courses. And I think this is the resilience of the Filipinos. So that's something that I'm actually kind of surprised. I mean, I'm not surprised entirely, but it's fascinating to understand that. And we had fought so many times against the Muslims. So Filipinos use more psychological ways to manage in a war or in a case of a battle better than other people. They don't they think like a spy. And we have this word called descarte. It's basically strategy. So you plan a strategy, and you kind of figure out how the enemy thinks, and you basically open up a Pandora's box to try to get to where how you need to get there. And considering the fact that we've survived not just multiple we didn't just survive different wars. We had to fight consistently with the Muslims, but we also had to fight for survivals in order to live under extreme circumstances. So Philippines have between the snakes and the jungle fever, you'd have to have really good mind, really good immunity, and flexibility, highly flexible. You have to be very flexible to get things done. And adaptability is probably a big quotient of intelligence. And this is what's necessary in terms of war. It's not just about how good the equipments are, it is how you use the equipment. And equipments can actually just cause severe damage if you don't have a proper mind behind it. So you can see how with Iran, with all of the missiles and all that in mass, the actual utilization is poor. It's also demonic. So perhaps God is on the side of good people, or the ones that are caring of people. So another thing that's very interesting about Filipinos is that we actually hate war. Filipinos will avoid war as much as possible because it's part of our relatability. Let it go and let God. And we wanted to not get into as many fight as much as possible, which is why the Philippines is from the Japanese point of view and the Korean point of view, the Philippines is buffering them from what goes on between some kind of a Chinese. If there's a Chinese invasion, the Philippines, in fact, blocks it from Korea and Japan. And then the Philippines, being supported by the U.S., is actually highly supportive of preventing major issue with Korea, Japan, and China. And so what surprised me is that the Filipinos are not just servants of the world, we appear to be the nanny of military as well. Because for some odd reason, they'll get a handful of Filipino, stick them with the war that goes on in Korea or with the Chinese, and for some odd reason, we excelled in it, and it wins war. And it ends the war as well. Because Filipinos do not enjoy war. We don't aim for that ever. And so if you think about it, if Japan, for example, is actually the Philippines, imagine the kind of fight that would happen between China and Japan. They would be, you know, conquering and fighting with each other, and they'll use their big guns. Filipinos are not big. I think they can be good. We can be good engineers, but we somehow don't do it in our own country, and we somehow we're not as entrepreneurial. It. I would always say that there's brilliance upon the Chinese and the Japanese that you cannot, that Filipinos couldn't quite, achieve. I mean, the Japanese are very stable, very uh, not monogamous, but they are very homogeneous. They're homogeneous. Filipinos are not homogeneous. We have a lot of arguments among each other, but we don't like wars. And we want to survive it. We want to end it. And so with the attack of China into the Philippines, Filipinos have always kept their cool in regards to China. We understand that they're big and they're brilliant and whatever it is, and but we know our rights. So Filipinos can exert their right, but they are careful, not to frazzle, and because the Chinese have bases now, and so the Filipinos are actually smart as at also having other people fight our war. Okay, if you look at Iran, he's using proxy. Okay, the Filipinos get what we are good at, and we're like, okay, well, let's get this, pull them in to kind of buffer the war. The same way we use Magellan. Magellan and the Spaniards were actually the one we put at the front to go and attack the Mindanao people, the Muslim sector. So and it's part of the strategy. Now the thing with Filipinos, by the way, is that the men and women can strategize in order to win. When there was a serious well with the Spanish Filipino and the war that took place, the Filipino women became spies. So I think the Filipino women makes it's not as known, but I think the way the Filipino women have a certain status that's more equal to men strengthens the society in terms of war and war strategies. And that is where I see very strong similarity between the Filipinos and the Israeli. Because the Israeli have very strong women as well. And in point is Deborah from the book of Judges. And so when you have a society where the men and women know how to treat each other better, there's better coordination, the military and the prowess is better. And if you look at the Middle East, their soldiers are not really the best because of the way women are treated. I think that's the case. And also they're praising demons. And anyway, I'm gonna make the next video, and that one is gonna be more, so this is more like the Filipino strength. Again, don't forget the word po. Dito po. Tayo na po. And the word tayo na. Tayo na is let's go. Sige. Go ahead. So anyhow, I think we need to strengthen alliances. So the one thing that Filipinos are really good at is actually flipping. Okay, it doesn't matter whether we flip burgers, but we can flip the enemy. And we're Filipinos. Also, the word Philippines is the only country that looks like a fetus. And the name given to the Philippines by the Spaniards is Philippines. We don't have pine trees as much. That's kind of a weird thing. But what makes Filipino is that we are, the word pile is to choose, pino is fine. It's a chosen fine people, or the pickens. We are picked. Okay, so I guess I should title this video The Chosen Pinos, because God has a great sense of humor. So we're God's chosen people for the evangelism of Asia, because only Korea and the Philippines are more democratic and more Christian based. South Korea has some Christians in it. And South Korea and the Philippines actually, apparently there's lots of Koreans that comes to the Philippines in particular. They go to the little islands and they take education there, and sometimes they like it there. I don't know. Sometimes it's a lot of Korean. And Filipinos are like, oh, okay, there's lots of them now. But we kind of, as long as they got along with us, that's all we care. I mean, we're happy to invite them. We like foreigners. So anyhow, gonna end it right here. Thank you and God bless. Tayo na po.